Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and you know what? It is solo week here at the Bufnagle Studios, so I am by myself today. No Harry, no Zach, no big brain smart heads, just me, little brain smart head, I guess, and we're going to be talking about, well, all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. This is a little, it's a little short episode today, I think. Just some musings on a conversation I had with a guy last week on the nature of getting your due, I guess is the way to think about it. But before I get onto that, I want to make sure that I thank everybody out there for being here. Without you, we're nothing here at the Buff. We appreciate having you out there because you have made us a global top 10% podcast. And if you are new to the podcast, I want to welcome you. Thank you for coming and encourage you to give us 4 or 5 or 175 episodes, whatever it is, and listen and see if we don't give you something to think about and a reason to come back for more. Remember to hit that subscribe button or the little smiley star, we like you button, the 5 stars, and here's a coupon for a free ice cream sundae, something, whatever, those, whatever good thing you can do out there for us. We appreciated that. And we will give you a big thumbs up. Thank you very much for that. And we'll try to keep giving you good content and a reason to come back. Remember, tell a friend to listen and you will get a free episode. And we get one of those 5-star reviews. I get pudding, Zach gets brownies, and Harry gets cookies. So think of all the good you are doing when you do that. So today's story starts with, I was talking to a gentleman who was an artist. He's about my age, I think, and he grew up here in Indiana, and he's been doing his artist craft stuff for a number of years. And it's interesting because he's never made it big. I mean, he's made it bigger than I've made it big, certainly doing artwork kinds of things. But he does his gig and he does his stuff, but he's never made it. Like you don't know him like Yo-Yo Ma. Like he's not like one of those guys, but if you were in the art community, you would probably know who he is. He has done well, but he's never made it big, really big. And he runs an art studio and he does art stuff here in what do they say about Indiana? Here in the crossroads of America. So he's just doing his thing. He's finding his way. He's doing the art thing. He's doing what he's called to be doing. And he said he had been at an event, some kind of art event thing. And there were many other, I guess I call them other artists and craftsmen there, people who are in his niche, in his field, doing all of these art things. And it was kind of a joint effort by some suppliers to bring these guys in and, kind of a movers and shakers kind of thing. I think the word they use now is influencer. But I had seen part of this event. It had been broadcast live on the interweb, so I had seen parts of this, and I recognized when they went around the room. They said, "Here's this guy, and here's this guy, and here's this guy," and I knew some of these guys from their YouTube stardom. I didn't know this guy from YouTube stardom. I had seen some of his stuff on the web, but that's not where I knew him. I knew him because I had met him and I have been talking with him over the last couple months. And it was interesting to me because here's this guy who I had known is a good artist, and he's there, and I was pleased to see him there. And then there were all these other guys who are by all amounts of internet famousness, they were high level influencers, people with millions or tens of millions of views on the YouTube machine and thousands of or hundreds of thousands of subscribers. This is, I mean, if you're in this space, and we are here, we're on the edge, we're on the edge of this space here with this little podcast. That there are people out there that are like, it's one of these distributions, and the distribution is it's a highly skewed distribution. There are people that are way, 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 way out in the right tail, we would say, and these are those people. And there were some of these people there, and there was this guy I know, and he was there, and he's not out on the right tail. He's farther out in the tail than I am, but he is. Well, he was there too, and he's not all the way out to the right, and. And the guy I was talking to was talking about the event and how there were so many young people at the event. And he's my age, so he's in his mid-50s, I guess. And he is he had a little bit of lament about all the young people who were there being influencers, I guess is the right word. And he recognized that these guys are all technically adept. They have they do their thing. They have their following. They play the art game, but more than that, they play the YouTube game. They play the influencer game. And he said to me, it was rather interesting to hear him say this, because I never really think of art as a competition. But you know, if you are out there fighting for the eyeballs of people, if you're fighting for the for grants, and you're fighting for people who spend their hard-earned money on art kinds of things, then you are in competition with these people. And you know, I don't like to think of this podcast as a competition, but we're in competition for your precious time while you are listening to things. We appreciate, like I said, we appreciate that you are here, and we appreciate you sharing us with others. So he was talking about this competition, and he said, you know, I can go toe to toe with this guy that he was pointing at, this guy he was talking to, and he said, I can come out on top. And it was really interesting. It was a very rare bit of I guess what, horn tooting, right? You toot your own horn, and because most, like, it's very difficult for people to do that. I mean, this man's very humble with regard to his abilities. He does a great job with this stuff. And to hear him say this was a little bit odd. He said, I've been doing this since before this other guy was born. And he's just got lots of followers. He said, I've been doing this since before he was born. I should have recorded everything I've been doing. I would have all of this content, you know, over the last 25 years, I've been doing this stuff. And guys like this are pulling in 40 grand a month in viewership payments. And I was just blown away. I was like, holy cow, 40 grand a month from YouTube videos, and having people subscribe and hit the, you know, they're hitting the Smiley Star button, and they're sending that guy, you know, pudding and brownies and chunks of cookies, and he's pulling in 40 grand a month from YouTube. And he was, in his perspective, he was ticked. He was just, and I think justifiably ticked. And I think his lament is something that all of us, at least in some capacity, can relate to. You know, I think most of us try to work hard. We try to do well, and on occasion we get, for lack of a better term from us old guys, we tend to get passed by the young whippersnappers. All right? So somebody comes in and they are the hot new thing. They are fashionable. They are hip. They are playing the game the right way. And we're sitting here going, what about me? And anybody who's at least my age in their career recognizes that. I've seen that. I've witnessed that. I've felt that. And you're like, holy cow, what do? I've been doing all this work this long. I've been doing it this hard. I ought to be getting, where's my piece of the pie? And it's a very prideful thing to do. And I recognize that. The reason I do is because I've done it. I know that that's a big issue for me, is wanting to get the accolades, to get, you know, you just want the hat tip. You just want you want recognition that you're doing it well. I think probably more than, I'll take the 40 grand a month. I wouldn't turn that down. But but you want the recognition, right? You want people, you want to know that people know that you're doing it well. It's one thing to have a couple, have your boss say that and they say, "Oh, thank you very much. Here's your little thing." But you want to, it's a very human thing. I'm not sure it's the right thing as someone who has done that. But it's a very human thing to want that recognition. And that's the problem. Okay. That is the problem. And that is a downfall because it leads you away from the way we should be doing things. All right. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And my heart went out to this guy because I know what he's going through, and I know the I, I've been there. I've been there, and I've seen it in a different realm, but I know what he's going through. So what do we do about this? All right. How do we address this in a manner that is consistent with our ethic to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure life? How do we avoid going off the road into that rut that is a prideful rut, and it distracts us from doing well? What do we do? Okay, well, the first thing to recognize, and man, this is hard because it offends our sense of justice. And the first thing is that life is not fair. It is just not. It is not fair. It is. It's not fair in that justice sense, right? And justice is this concept that you should get what you deserve. Whether that's when you do something good, you should get good. When you do something poorly, you should be punished. Or when you do the bad thing, you should be punished. And this we have this sense of justice, and it's interesting. I was reading or listening to something quite a while ago, and I heard somebody talk about the concept of "to each his own." And I've always heard that in the sense somebody would say something like, "Well, I like chocolate pudding," and somebody else would say, "I like banana pudding," and then both people go, "Well, to each his own." And we take that as a mantra pointing toward to beauties in the eye of the beholder, or there's a lot of variety in what people like, that sort of thing. But that's not the context where that phrase carries its full meaning. All right, you can use that to express that sentiment that there are varieties of wants and varieties of liking, but the true measure of that is one of justice. To each his own is a statement that talks about you will get yours, meaning if and that's like a divine complete sense of justice. In the long run, to each his own, you will get what you deserve. And that's a different concept, at least to me. I'd never heard that expressed in that sense. So if you do well in the long run, remember it's a long game, in the long run, to each his own, you will get what you are due. Whether that's good if you've done good, or whether it's punishment when you have not done good, to each his own. So you screw up, you will pay the price. You do well, you will get the reward. To each gets his own. That's the first thing. So remember, life's not fair, but in the long run, to each his own. I used to teach this little statistics and probability class to everyone from clinical trial physicians and medical researchers all the way down to kindergarten students. And I would have to dumb it down for the doctor. No, I'm sorry, for the kindergartners. And one thing we would do is we take these little Halloween sized, what do they call them? Fun size M&M packets. And what we do when I do the class is we do everything with regards to what kind of colors you get in the bag when you open it up. And what that little bag is what statisticians call a random sample from a larger population. And when you get the little bag of M&Ms, you don't know what's inside it, and you can make inference about what's in there, and you can make inference about the population as a whole from that bag. But the first thing we do is we would take that bag and we would open them up and we count how many little candies are inside there. And when I did this with kindergartners, the first thing I recognized is that the thing that bothered them more than anything else was not that different kids had different numbers of blues and oranges and reds. It's that some kids had like 18 little candies in there, and some kids had 17, and some kids had 19. And the lesson there is that life's not fair. Life ain't fair. That's just the way it is, and there's no way to make it fair in that context. There are things that people get that you won't get. There's stuff you get that other people won't get. Other people will get away with stuff that you won't get away with. Life ain't fair. Okay. There's always somebody that gets benefit without doing the work. There's always somebody that gets overlooked. That's what happens. And what's interesting now with regard to somebody getting benefit without doing the same amount of work that you have is that I think it's worse now than it was. And I think the interwebs have a lot to do with this thing. So when you see what's out on the web, the competition that you're in is no longer just your local competition. You are in competition now at a, well, used to be in competition locally. You're now in competition at a state level or a national level or even a global, intergalactic, universal level. Everybody out there is your competitor. And if I'm a Lego builder, and I am, and I build something really awesome, and I put it out on the internet, and I say, "Hey, look at me! I want my due. I want my little smiley star for doing well." As soon as you do that, you can find one, or 10, or 1,000, or 10,000 people who have done what you've done, but they've done it better. And if you are a chef, you can find somebody out there that makes a better creme brulee. And you can find, like, if you are a painter, you can find somebody who can paint better. And if you're a writer, you can find somebody who can write better. And it doesn't matter what realm you are in, you will always find somebody that is, like I said before, that is way farther out in the right tail of that distribution. They're farther out than you are. And that's the competition now. That is the situation we're in. Instead of being in a competition with just somebody locally, somebody at your school or in your little local community, it's, you can win the bake sale at the local county fair, but now it's not the county fair anymore. It's the internet fair, and everybody's out there competing. And instead of competing with 10 or 30 or even 100 other people, you're not competing with 7.5 billion people worldwide. And it's a really hard thing to do. All right. Look at the kids these days having to compete with that. Everything is being filmed. Everything is being put on the web. And no wonder everybody is all over these social media things all the time. They're always competing for the recognition. I want my due. I want the smiley stars. I want to get those likes. I want the thumbs up. It's a gigantic game, or it's a bunch of games of this thing we used to play when I was a kid called King of the Hill. And we played this back in Wisconsin in the 70s when it really snowed back in those days. And they would take all the snow in the parking lots and they'd push it into these gigantic piles. And when you're a little kid, that pile of snow that's a mountain. And we used to play King of the Hill. So somebody would, it'd be recess, and there, the asphalt part of the parking lot would be, or the playground would be cleared, and they would push all that snow to the edges. And there would be these massive, 12, 15 feet high, at least, piles of snow. And it wasn't nice snow. I mean, this is the grimy snow that gets scraped up off the asphalt. And there's this pile, and somebody would, you'd scramble to the top, and somebody won't want to be on the top. And if you are on the top, you are now being targeted, and your goal is to stay on top if you're the guy on top. And if you are one of the guys not on the top, your goal is to take the guy on the top down. It's a gigantic game of King of the Hill, and it was fun when I was 8 and in 3rd grade playing that. And I don't think I ever made it to the top. I was just one of those guys that was able to grab somebody's boot and pull them down. But that's what the kids are facing now on a day-to-day level on everything they do. And to me, it's a little bit frightening to see them have to, well, they don't have to undergo that, and that's what we're going to talk about. But it's frightening to see that they have to do that with everything they're doing. And that's um, I, I I think that's a painful thing, and I think we should work to get away from that. So life's not fair, and you're always in a competition, and the competition is bigger now than it ever was for pretty much everything you're doing. We used to see little. If we were lucky, we would see snippets of, for example, competing teams or somebody doing some great thing on TV. Maybe once a week, you could see maybe college football games. The occasional we'd see NFL games. There'd be two games on a week instead of like 6 or 7 on national TV now. We would catch maybe a local baseball game, or the World Series would be on there. Those kinds of things. That's how we would see the greatness that was out there. But that was only at the highest level. And that was it. That's all you saw. And you knew that was something that wasn't attainable. That was the pros. That was somebody else. You never saw high school kids. You never saw middle school kids. We never saw 8-year-olds playing piano on TV. You never saw that. We never saw any of that competition. So you were comfortable walking, doing your piano lesson down at Mrs. McCrary's house, on Monday afternoons. That was a thing you could do, and you could be justified in doing your best for that thing. You could be yourself in that role. Right? So we didn't see all the competition, but we see it now, right? And what do we do with this? And it's interesting to me to think about a guy like DiMaggio. Well, I think we've heard of Joe DiMaggio, who's this great player for the Yankees. And it turns out he grew up actually in San Francisco. And I didn't know this until I started researching him. But he was born in 1914, and he grew up in San Francisco. There were no Babe Ruth leagues. There was no Little League. There was no junior league. Like, kids just played ball, and they just played ball. There's the guys in the street here. We'd get together and we'd play ball, and they'd do it day after day after day after day. And some of them got good, like DiMaggio, and some of them didn't get very good. And then, but they went home and they did their other things, and they went with their lives. But DiMaggio, he played there at the playground when he was about 10 years old. His dad was a fisherman, and Joe didn't like working on the fishing boat. He thought it was nauseating and it smelled bad, and he didn't want to go do that. And his dad thought he was lazy for playing baseball. And he just played in the playground. So it was like 1925-ish. He's a little kid. At most, was radio a thing back then? 1925, I guess it was. So he could probably listen to games on the radio if they were getting them out in San Francisco. The closest thing to baseball out there was the Pacific Coast League, and the San Francisco Seals played on the Pacific Coast League. At age 10, DiMaggio was playing on the playground. And by 1931, which by my computations, he was 15 at the time. He was a 15-year-old kid. And by 1931, he was playing semi-pro ball, right? And then he got pulled up. They found him. His brother Vince played for the Pacific Coast League San Francisco Seals. And his brother got him a spot on that roster. He said to the manager, "Hey, my kid brother's pretty good." And this was at 15, and he dropped out of high school, right? And by 1935, 4 years later, he was MVP of the Pacific Coast League. In 1936, May 3rd, he made his Yankees debut, and the rest is history, they say. And here was DiMaggio, and he kept rising. You can see him. He's a guy. I'll bet he was so good, even as a 10-year-old on the playground, that everybody knew this guy was different. Right? There's a kid that he must have had just a great swing. He had really long legs. He could run fast. I bet he had a cannon for an arm, I'm sure, certainly in comparison to other 10-year-olds. But he kept rising to his pinnacle of greatness. But he did it never really. He would see that, he could see what was going on next to him, but he never had to compare himself all the way. He never had to compare himself to the other great players that were growing up elsewhere around the country, because he never ran into him. He never saw him. There was never a concern or a worry for him. He just played the game where he was, his local game. He played the local game. I'm going to play at the playground. I'm going to play semi-pro ball. I'm going to play in the PCL, and then I'm going to play with the Yankees. And however far I get, that's how far I'm going to get. There was no competition with anybody other than those who were on the field at the same time. All right. So that's a thing that is different now than it was then. Like if he were doing that now, by age 10, he would have been playing ball for at least 5 years, if not 7. They start him at 3 or 4, and they do this kind of imitation t-ball thing, and these kids learn to throw and how to strut and how to wear the sunglasses and wear the hat, and they have a travel bag, and they do all this other stuff. But you know what? They didn't have that. And I think that simpler time has a lesson for us here. I don't think we have to go back to it, but I think we have to keep the perspective in it. So how do we deal with these big comparisons, these competitions you cannot win? This idea that you are always going to find somebody out there who is better. There's somebody farther out on the tail of the distribution. How do we deal with these infinite competitors around the world with knowledge that there's always someone who's going to be better? The answer is to play your game. Play your own game. Back in episode 87 of this podcast, the title of the podcast is The Only Game You Have to Win is the Game Against Yourself. And we talked a lot about youth sports there. But I think that it's bigger than that, right? You have to recognize from the beginning that you are Imago Dei, and you are called to greatness, not in competition with other people, but in the goal of fulfilling that image and likeness of God. That's the game you have to play. And that's a game you can win. And you can win it by doing the right things. Your greatness there in that game, you may or may not realize greatness on the ball diamond or in the theater or in the art studio or on your report card or any of those other things. These things are to some extent outside of your control, certainly if you're in competition for these things. There are great, great, great students that don't get into Harvard. There are great, great, great ball players that don't make their high school team and their career's over. There are great, great, great musicians that don't get picked for the Super Youth Symphony because they were sick that day. Those are things, or you may just run up against Yo-Yo Ma for the cello spot and you're toast. And you might have been like the second best cellist in the world. And you got stuck behind this guy. Sorry. And then you drop out and then you go do something else. Maybe you go fix radios or you learn how to drive IndyCar or something. Whether or not you can get greatness in those things, there's a limit to how much control of that you have. What is fully in your control is your fulfillment of the person that you were created to be. You can become the best father or mother or daughter or wife or husband or friend or business partner or cook or custodian or poet or artist or author or podcaster or singer or your neighbor or even citizen. You can become the best one of those that you can be. That's the thing that you can be. The best one of that is the thing that you become best of for you. The question is, what do you do with the material you have? You will be the best you that you decide to be. No one's going to excel at being you more than you will excel at being you. How will you reflect that divine spark that you have been given? Don't be satisfied with anything less than everything. You've been given that. And with everything, I mean like everything for you to become what you can be. Don't settle for less than that. The only king of the hill that you have to play, the only king out there is you. You're the only one climbing your hill. You're the only one there. You can sit at the bottom of the hill. You can climb to the top of the hill. That snow is covered in ice. It might have some rocks in it. You might slide down. Somebody might actually help you, which would be great. But in the end, you can climb to the top. But what's at the top isn't just a little flag you put up and a selfie that you take that you post to the interweb and hope to get some smiley stars. At the top is the perfection of the person you were made to be. What will you do to get yourself to the top? And what will you do when you get there? Because it's slippery. More snow comes. The truck comes and pushes more snow into the pile. You might have to climb higher. You might see that there's another hill you have to climb. Avoid the temptation of fame and notoriety. We always talk about hitting the smiley star button and giving us the likes because that really helps us here. It helps us do this. But you know what? If we never get bigger than what we are right now, as long as we're reaching, we have gotten calls and we've gotten letters and we've gotten emails and all of those things from people that we have helped become what they want to be, what they are built to be. And that to me is something that they can never take that away from us. They can never take that away from us. And it doesn't matter where we are on that massive distribution that has a really large right tail when it comes to podcast stuff. We appreciate those things and we love those things, but that's not why we do this. That doesn't mean don't hit the button, but still hit the button, okay? But because the more you do that, the more people we can help, the more people we can reach to. But we will still do it regardless of whether or not we ever get another Smiley Star. And that's the thing we got to keep doing. So the only king of the hill up there is you. You've got to keep climbing to the top. Avoid the temptations of fame and notoriety. Fashion is a fleeting mistress. Focus on the things that last. It's a long game. You are in the middle somewhere. If you're listening right now, you're somewhere in the middle of a 100-year game. And if you're 15, that puts you somewhere, I don't know, early in the first quarter of your game. If you are 75, it's fourth quarter time. You got to ask yourself, are you in position to win this thing? And if not, you better start throwing some long passes. It's just time to really go for it. And if you're 50, hey, you know what? You just sloughed off the halftime show, and on we go here to the third quarter. So make it work. Make it a game that you can win. Focus on the things that last. Do not despair, no matter what happens. If you slide down the mountain, climb back up, get back at it. You will fall. Just get back up. Virtues, habits directed at excellence will lead you where you want to go. They will keep you on the narrow. They will keep you on the straight. They will help you avoid getting stuck in one of the ruts on either side. Don't get caught up in the comparisons. You only have to compare yourself with the you that you were made to become. And that is why every time we do this podcast, we remind you essentially of one thing: to seek the good. That will get you where you want to go. So remember, seek the good, be the good, spread that good, and enjoy the adventure of life.